Now it's time to present our Lifetime Achievement Award. This award goes to the Honorable Richard A. Jones, United States District Court Judge. Now, I could wax poetic all night about Judge Jones and what he's meant to me personally. I mean, frankly, James just did a lot of it, so I appreciate that. But they told me to keep the remarks brief, so I'm going to try and do that. Judge Jones told me to keep the remarks brief. You're going to hear from him a lot here in a moment. You all know who he is. But I think I can hardly think of anyone more deserving of this award. And to me, there's something special, something fitting about the fact that he is an Article III judge, meaning that once he was appointed, that's a role that he'll be in for life, in winning this particular award. There's criticism of the lifetime appointment rule, but I think Alexander Hamilton said it best when he said that the permanency in office would allow and ensure the judiciary to remain firm and independent. And I thought that was an apt description for Judge Jones. I mean, he has been a permanent fixture in the Seattle legal community and the broader Black community here. And I think that is something that is truly worthy of praise. He's been unwavering and firm in his commitment to LMBA. And through his longevity, he's led the organization and the community through good times, bad times, and everything in between. I won't talk about his legal acumen or his brilliance as a jurist, and that's only because his legacy to me is the countless lives that he's touched and the enduring principles of equality and fairness that he embodies. So tonight, we recognize the lifetime of distinguished service and dedication that continues to inspire this day of Richard A. Jones, my judge, Judge Jones. Congratulations.
I told Jamal I wasn't going to say anything tonight because you're going to get tired of me speaking up here after a while. But it's such a deep honor to be before all of you, and congratulations to all the award winners. Special shout out to my colleagues from the U.S. District Court, magistrates and district court judges. Thank you for being here. And thank all of you for being here. It's a very, very special night, and I want you to know I am so humbled by being here. The only controversy is tonight, when they were miking me up, they put this Janet Jackson headpiece on me. And then second, he messed up my hair. So if everybody's good with that, we can get started. All right. And a special round of applause for Erica Evans. She has done an amazing job, in part also with Michael Parham, my brother, who has been joined with her to try and make this a very special occasion tonight. So thank you for being here.
Yes, you go first. While they're getting set up, I am going to give each of them a proper introduction. I know you've heard a lot about Judge Jones this evening, so I won't get too much into it, but I did want to just briefly introduce these two amazing folks who are on stage. Erica Evans is an assistant United States attorney for the Western District of Washington. Erica is a past president of LMBA, as well as taught the LMBA Bar Studies program and was a co-chair of the Judge Charles V. Johnson Youth and Law Forum. Erica is a recipient of many awards, including most recently the 2024 Puget Sound Business Journal's 40 Under 40 Award. And again, I know you've heard a lot about Judge Jones, but I got to give him a proper introduction for those of you who don't know Judge Jones. Judge Jones is a United States District Court judge for the Western District of Washington here in Seattle. He was appointed to the federal bench in 2007, and prior to that, served as the King County Superior Court judge from 1994 to 2007. Judge Jones has a number of achievements that I think he will tell you about here on stage, but I just want to introduce these folks, both of whom are personal mentors of mine, as well as past Lauren Miller presidents. So you are in for a treat with this fireside chat with Judge Jones and Erica.
Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Erica Evans, and I have the distinct honor to guide you through the life and legacy of a local legend, a giant, and a national leader, the Honorable Richard A. Jones. So tonight, we're going to be exploring a powerful theme, a theme about how adversity does not dictate where your life is going to go, and instead, how to use challenges that you face and naysayers who doubt you as motivation to rise to the occasion. Before we get started, we have to shout out Michael Parham, who made sure that this discussion came together and all your work behind the scenes to collaborate and get all these photos that you all are going to see shortly. Thank you, Michael. We also want to thank the Lauren Miller Barr Foundation and our Madam President, Noah Murfeld, and the entire executive board. Thank you. So let's start at the beginning, Judge Jones.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Let's
okay.
go.
So we got some photos we're going to start showing, all right? Judge Jones, tell us who these people are in the photos.
That's my mother and father. And my mother was a beautiful woman from Bocas del Toro, Panama. And she came to this country not realizing that she had been naturalized as a child. And for many, many years of her life, she always thought that she was maybe here illegally. She didn't have any documentation to show a birth certificate. And she was terrified, filling out forms and just day-to-day occurrences. And she did not know that she was legal in this country until I applied for the U.S. Attorney's Office and did my own background investigation and got documents and records to show, Mom, look, you're a naturalized citizen. And that was the first time. She started crying because she had no idea that she had been here all that time legally. And so she was a hardworking woman, and if you talk about what sacrifice, commitment, she raised 8 kids in a 2-bedroom house. So you go figure out what that looks like, especially with the 8 kids in our house.
Wow.
But she was an amazing, amazing woman. And the one thing I always knew, my mom loved me. There's no question about that. My father, bold and strong. You could look at his arms. And my dad was a carpenter out of Chicago, and amazing carpenter. He worked on Ida B. Wells' homes for 13 years. These are national treasures at this point in time. And after having worked for them for 13 years, he was hired by a company on a $6 million contract. Now, back in the 20s and 30s, that was a huge contract. So they hired him. He shows up. Guy in charge says, no blacks will work with any whites on this job, so go home.
Wow.
So my dad went to the Urban League, and they got involved. They started making some noise about what was going to happen, what was going to transpire. So they tried to negotiate with my dad, and my dad said, I'm not going to take a cleanup man job. They said, you can't apply your trade, but you can clean stuff up. My dad said, I will not do that. So he wasn't unemployed, because back then they had some gangsters in town, some mobsters, and they used to always tell us stories about this group called the Jones Boys. It wasn't my family. That didn't happen until they got to Seattle. But nonetheless, the Jones Boys would hire black laborers who couldn't apply their skilled trade in the profession. And they had to apply the trade. They were well paid, but my brothers told me my dad would go over to the Rosenball building, and they would walk up the stairs, and there were 2 guys standing there with Thompson submachine guns, because everybody got paid in cash. And that was the way you had to work as a black man back at that point in time. And one thing my dad always taught us, he said, if somebody knocks you down, he said, you get back up. He said, if they knock you down, you get back up and keep slugging. If they knock you down the 3rd time, he said, you get a 2x4, his words, and knock that sucker out. Okay.
We have another photo. We're going to push it too. You're going to love it, right? Yes. Tell us about this photo.
Okay. You have to take into consideration that in my childhood, the biggest stories on TV, the biggest shows, were all Westerns. So my game plan was I was convinced I was going to be the first black cowboy that was going to be on TV. So you can imagine my joy, which I will tell you was the happiest day of my childhood, when here comes somebody walking down the street and got a horse in front of my house.
In Seattle.
In Seattle. I cried, whined, and whined, and whined until they finally put me in the horse, and I thought it was mine. And then they took Topper away, and I was brokenhearted, but I had my picture, so I was good.
Yes, Topper. Okay. We have another one we're going to push it to as well. Is this the home you were talking about?
Yes, this is 410 22nd. If you want to visit the Central District now, and it's not Lower Capitol Hill, it's the CD. No matter what you say, that's the CD. And our home was right smack dab in the middle of the CD. If you took a bullseye, we were right in the middle, right around the corner from Garfield High School. And for those that don't or didn't know about Garfield, I know you know where Ezel's Chicken is. It's right around the corner from Ezel's. And that was a home where 8 kids were raised. And when the family first moved in there were 2 bedrooms in the entire house. My dad added one after everybody moved there. It was before I was born. And so upstairs, the attic, my sister's here because she was there before I was born. And put it this way, it wasn't real wallboard. It was thinner than wallboard. And there wasn't any insulation. And if you punched a hole in there, you saw the roof. And we had a coal furnace in our home until I was in the 8th or 9th grade, and nonetheless, that's what we grew up, and that was home. And if you look at that little small window at the top of the house, I used to call that our Street of Dreams window. Street of Dreams means something different for everybody else, but across the street were just the blackberry bushes. And I can tell you, I spent a lot of time looking out that window, wondering what was life going to be like, what was the next opportunity that's going to come my way as a child. I mean, when I was brought home, there were so many people in our house. We had a dresser drawer in my parents' bedroom, so they pulled out the middle drawer. There was no room for a bassinet or anything. They pulled out the middle drawer, and it was mine, all by myself. I didn't have to share. But it was still, that was my crib. That's where I spent my time. And I'm not telling these stories to say, oh, poor Richard, he was so poor, because I ain't poor anymore, I'll tell you that.
We have another young on the next photo. There we are. What were some of your hopes and dreams at this point in your life, Judge Jones?
Well, for lack of a better term, I probably just got an ass whooping. That's why I look so sad. And I was trying to look real pitiful for the next scene. But I was just a child. I mean, growing up in 410, we had a strong sense of family, strong sense of who we were. The neighborhood was described as poor, low income, and poverty. This is on real estate documents, and they didn't have any reason to hide it because that's all we knew in our neighborhood, and everybody lived the same. There were no doctors or lawyers or business people except for small store owners, and that was what life looked like. That was our world, and there was no reason to be ashamed of it or sorrowful. That was home. That was community. We knew everybody in our block. And that was life on 410 22nd.
I'm going to transition to later in life, in high school. I think we have a photo of you in high school. There we go. Now, what was your high school experience like?
I was in the 8th grade, and in our neighborhood, there was a lot of boys. And we didn't have a gang. We had a pack. And we didn't do bad stuff, or at least no bad stuff that we got caught at. We were pretty good. And we spent a lot of time just doing what young boys do, just hanging out. And so my mom was afraid after raising 7 other kids that I was going to get busy like some of the other boys in the family were, and she was afraid of that, definitely afraid. And so, not that they were doing bad stuff, but some of them got caught. But aside from that, she wanted an opportunity for me to think beyond just 410. And she wanted me to have an opportunity to believe that this was a bigger world out there with more opportunities. So she went up to the local priest up at Immaculate Conception, where we went to grade school, and she went up there singing hardcore blues. She said, please, I got to get him out of the neighborhood. I can't let him stay here. He's going to get in serious trouble. And so the priest called around and then came back and told my mom they had a scholarship for me to go to Olympia. And it was a boarding school, St. Martin's High School. Now, let me put it in context. My neighborhood was almost all black and some Asians, but it was almost all black. All my block, the block on the other side, around the corner, everybody was black in my neighborhood. And the transition was going to be, I was going to be at a school that was all white except for one other black person. And so we hung deep. As a matter of fact, they put our lockers together. Oh, look who it happened to be. You're going to be sitting right next to Mike Smith. And so we were the best of friends and the tightest of friends. And I can tell you I got a great education because it took me past the idea that education meant not having been arrested by the time you got out of high school and stopped. And that wasn't good enough. And so they wanted me to go to St. Martin's to have a different experience. But I could tell you that I got a great education. I got my mind and gear towards going to college. But the challenge was some of the other students that were there. Because these other students had never, for the most part, never been around anybody black. And so they thought it was okay to say racist things and say, it's okay, Richard, we're not talking about you. But they talk about other black people. And so just like my dad said, there was a lot of knockdowns. There were no 2x4s around. But I learned to be real sharp with my mouth. And, I mean, I could slice somebody up and dice real quick if they started talking. And the other benefit I had was none of these guys that I went to school with knew what the dozens were. And the dozens when you talk about somebody's mama. And so people aren't laughing because you don't know what those are. It's not the 12s either. But in any event, that was life at St. Martin's. And like I said, I got a great education for the most part. The professors and instructors there, they were all good people, and they wanted to push for us to have a great education.
Yes. That experience being at an all-white school, would you say that the teachers and faculty were supportive of your pursuit of higher education?
For the most part, yes. But we had one person who was a coach, and he had coached me before, and his goal was he was supposed to be the college counselor. You made an appointment, you go talk to your college counselor. So I made the appointment, I walked down to his office, and I see the couple people in front of me. They come out with brochures, package of applications, and I said, good, this is going to make this easy. So when I go in, first thing that comes out of his mouth is, well, Jones, I'm not sure if you really want to go to college. And I said, what do you mean not go to college? I said, what do you think I've been here for 4 years? And he said, well, blacks don't really do well. They don't really get jobs. You don't get the benefit of the bargain for having spent, that time in college. Why don't you think about another career, like going to labor? He said, your father was a carpenter. He took care of your family. And I said, I respect the hard work that my father did, but my father had a bigger vision for me to use my education to get a college degree. That's why I came to this school and been paying my dues for the last 4 years. And he kept pushing this whole thing that I wasn't supposed to go to college and he wasn't going to yield. So I said, well, this conversation's over. I wasn't a federal judge, but I was acting like it. And so I looked at him and I said probably a few bad words. And I walked out of the room and he said, where are you going? I didn't turn around. So I started walking down the hall back to the classroom and he said, Jones, come back here. Come back here. I never turned around. But what I did do is I gave him a one-finger salute and kept walking back to my classroom. And I didn't want to turn around mostly because I didn't want him to see me cry. That he told everybody else, you can go to college, but you can't because you're black.
It's remarkable that at a young age, you knew what he was saying was garbage. Where did that wisdom and that fire inside of you, Judge Jones, come from?
I think just as my father had worked so hard and he kept pounding in our heads and instilling in our head, and the things my mom would tell me about the racist things that she'd experienced when she was doing maid work, and all of that was just a building block to say, you better be prepared for life. You better prepared for casualties, obstructions, people trying to stop you from doing what you want to do. So all that was in my head. And so I was determined. I had the three P's: persistence, perspiration, perseverance, and a bunch of other P's. But the key was I wasn't letting anybody else stop me from what I was going to do. So that fire was always in my belly from the time I was a small boy.
That's right. And with that fire, what did you do next?
Went to college.
Went to college.
And the college I went to, I'll get a shout out for CLU. All right. Woo, woo. And I had a great experience. I had a 4-year scholarship at CLU. I'd done well enough in high school that I qualified for a scholarship, and I was super happy. But to qualify for the scholarship, I had to work in work-study. So they sent me over to the cafeteria to work. So I go to the cafeteria, and the supervisor comes out. So he gives me the tour of the kitchen, behind the counter where all the food is, the servers were, and then he takes me to the kitchen where all the hot stuff is coming out of how they clean dishes and stuff. And he said, well, which job would you like? And I said, yours. And he said, what do you mean you want my job? And I said, I'm allergic to steam, so I can't do any of these other jobs. I didn't have a diagnosis that I was allergic to steam. I self-diagnosed. He bought it, so I was good, so he let me take his job. And so all I had to do was count money and fill out a form at the end of the day, and I was always honest about the money. No problem, no foul, and I had a great time. Wow. I graduated.
I think we got a photo from around that time.
Yeah, that was high school, college. Yeah.
Did you take any classes in college that focused on law?
Well, you know, I had worked in so many camp counselor positions. I had worked with the tutoring program where we'd go out and match students with tutors, inner city kids with tutors from the outside community. They'd come in and we'd match them, and they would work with these kids because they didn't have any other family members that were educated enough to help them get through school. And that was my job. And so I loved doing that. And so I thought I was going to go in education, and I was going to have a good time doing that, working with kids. So third year, I decided I was going to take this law class. So I get into the law class, and the professor never said anything racist, never said anything discriminatory. But what he did do, there was myself and a couple of the black kids in the class, he would always look past us and say, you'd be a good lawyer because your mom is a Superior Court judge. You'd be a good lawyer because your family has a law firm downtown. So he kept bouncing around. They never looked at myself or the other two black students, and we even talked about it and said, has he ever said anything about you'd be a good lawyer? And they said, no. And so we just figured that that was a mentality. And so my high school annual, if you go look, and you're supposed to put a caption about what you want to do in life, what your game plan is. And mine, you can go check it out now if you can find that one that was carved in stone back then. And it said, to prove myself. Because from high school and then college, I still had that same mentality that you're going to have to prove yourself, Richard. Nothing is going to be given to you, ever. So you're going to have to fight for it. I didn't need acknowledgement from this professor to tell me you're doing a good job, you're doing a great job. I didn't need that. I had sole determination based upon the foundation I had at 410. We call it the University of 410. I didn't need anybody else's endorsement to say you can do this or you're doing a good job. It was, you better get out there and hit it, because if you don't hit it on your own and make it, it's not going to happen for you.
And that seems that was a pivotal point for you as well, just not having that, them speaking, oh, you're going to be a great attorney. That seemed to inspire you to apply and go to law school.
It did.
And where did you go?
I went to, for all the dog fans in the house, UW. All right. See, I knew I couldn't come here later on in life and say, oh, I went to CLU or to UW. I want to cover both grounds in the state. Apologize for Gonzaga, but I couldn't spread myself too thin. But it gave me an opportunity to pursue law school. I was applying to graduate school or law school. I got into law school first, and it was a great experience. Many of my classmates would say, I love law school. Law school had the best time of my life. I still miss law school. Law school happened to be a vehicle to go on to the next step. And I'll tell you right now, I was so glad to get out of law school, not because it was UW. UW gave me a great education, but I worked about 20 to 30 hours throughout the entirety time I was in law school. And there was a time where I would go to the tutoring program in the morning and do accounting work. I'd squeeze my classes together. I'd get back and I'd go to the U.S. Attorney's Office and serve as a law clerk there until about 1 to about 5:30 or 6. I'd go back to the tutoring place, study and close things up and work with the kids. I'd really start studying around 9:30 that night. So sleep was a rare opportunity, a rare occasion. But it's what I knew I had to do for the long ball to make this whole opportunity come about and make it bear fruit.
Mm-hmm. Did you find your professors in law school to be supportive?
I'd say for the most part, yes. But you have to remember, we were there in the Bakke affirmative action. And by the way, if anybody wants to criticize, I'm an affirmative action baby, and I'm proud of it. But it gave me an opportunity to go to law school, and I did well in all my other classes except for one. And I went to go talk to my professor to see if there's something we could do or give me some coaching or give me some insight about how I could do a little bit better in terms of the next time around. Now, mind you, I had been standing in line with a few other students that were talking about their grades. So I was peeking and see what their grades were. We talked about it, and I said, I ain't do that bad. And so I figured I was okay. So the guy that was in front of me, I hear the professor saying, oh, this is only 10% of your grade. This is just going to be a speed bump in your life. Don't worry about this impacting your career, just a speed bump. So I lasered on that, and I said, this is just a speed bump, 10%, I'm good to go. So I walk in. Now, we didn't have computers back then. They had blue books. And you can tell how old you are if you know what a blue book is. And I walked in, and he goes over. I never said my number, and he pulls my blue book out. And this is exactly how the conversation started and finished. He puts it down. He said, let me explain something to you. There are people that wish to become surgeons and don't have a steady hand. There are people that wish to become musicians. They don't have a musical ear. And some people wish to become lawyers. Do you get my drift? He may as well kick me in the gut. And I said, well, I was waiting for the punchline. I thought something else was going to come, and that was it. And I said, is that it? And he said, that's it. So I stood up. I kept my hands in my pocket this time because I wanted to finish law school. And I walked out, and I got to tell you, it was the biggest pity party of my life because I figured all the sacrifice that everybody had made, my dreams and desires were just going up in smoke, and it wasn't going to happen. So I walked from the law school over to Red Square, and I had the biggest pity party. And it was pouring down rain. I'll never forget. My jacket was open. I was getting soaking wet, and I didn't care. Because at that moment, I felt like a loser. That law school was just a fiction. Maybe I should go back to what that coach told me, go into labor because you don't have to have these obstacles. And as long as I was out there, and pity party didn't last long, that rain turned into steam because I started getting mad and I started getting hot. And so I walked back to the law school, and I walked in. I went down and got the form, and he was in there with another student. I just opened up his door, and he looks at me and he says, how dare you, young man? And I said, you don't have to dare me. You just need to sign this withdrawal slip because I'm going to stop being influenced by anything that you have to teach. You couldn't possibly teach me anything. If you sign this, you will never have to worry about me being in your class again. So he signed it and threw it back at me. And so I got to tell you, the next quarter, I took 21 hours. I was working 30 hours a week, and I was in law school. And I can't tell you what the demands and what the pressure was like. And when people talk about the good old days in law school, I'm sorry, baby, I don't know what that means.
Wow. But you rose to the occasion,
Yeah.
and you finished law school.
Finished law school.
You did it.
Yeah.
What was that transition like after graduating law school and entering into big law?
Well, I clerked 2 years at the U.S. Attorney's Office, so like I mentioned, shout out to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Shout out to the U.S. Attorney's Office because Erica's here. And when I applied, I didn't apply. One of the biggest firms in Seattle called me and please don't ask me the name of the firms because I'm not going to tell you. It was one firm, and it wasn't Bogle and Gates where Amari worked, because that's where I worked later on. But when I went, they asked me to apply. I went through all the whole process of the interviews and everything else. So I was really excited. And the day that I was supposed to get the job offer, Stan Pitkin, the U.S. attorney, came into the law clerk's area and, pulling coach. He's massaging my shoulders. And he's saying, Jones, he says, well, we're proud of you. I want you to know you got glowing recommendations. I've seen everyone, and I've written one on your behalf because we're real proud of the work that you've done. So thank you for the work that you've done for us. Bring it back home and let me know when you get the job. So I was excited, and I went down to Rosalini's 410, which at the time was the nicest restaurant in downtown Seattle. So I walk in excited. I thought I was going to see a big crowd, champagne, whistles and bells going off. And I walk in, and the hiring partner that called me was sitting there over a glass of water. Nobody else at the table, by himself. And he had this look on his face like he needed Pepto-Bismol or something. And so I said, I'm old enough to know good news and bad news. I said, instead of us struggling through a lunch, I said, why don't we talk about why I'm here? These are his words. I remember these things because it was emblazoned in my mind and in my soul and in my heart because it hurt so much. And he looked and he said, Richard, I made a recommendation for you to be hired. I made that recommendation. But the senior partners in the firm don't know how their white clients would react to having a black lawyer. So I'm sorry we can't offer you a job, but we know you'll be a good lawyer, and please don't take this personal. So what was I supposed to do? So I was a third-year law student. You sue Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck in third-year law school. And so I immediately went to Lem Howe, who's sitting over here, and I went to Justice Charles E. Smith, separate inputs of information. Both said that they would represent me, but both gave me the exact same advice. They said, Richard, it will be a long, hard, expensive struggle, and it will be difficult, and you may regret going through the process. And the bottom line, at the end of the day, you'll probably be blackballed from any other law firm because they will always think that you're the lawyer that sues to get a job. And so I had to eat that one. And what was really painful, I didn't go back to work that day and have to go back to work the next day and to see Stan Pitkin, the U.S. attorney. And I couldn't tell him I didn't get the job because I'm black. I just couldn't mouth those words. I didn't get the job because I'm black. And did it hurt? Hell yes, it hurt. But what I did was I said, I'm not going to go through this again. So I know you've never seen this. I took my resume the next day and put my picture on it and created resumes. So I started hunting for a job then. That way, I figured, if you didn't want to hire me, with me walking in the door, this is a black man. If you don't want to hire me, you're not going to give me serious consideration, put it in the round file, leave me alone. I don't need to go through this again. And so that was my experience in big law. But several years later, I had a chance to work with Judge Kuhnauer when he was at Bogle and Gates and I was at the Port of Seattle. And Judge Kuhnauer worked together. I didn't try the case, let's make a record. And Judge Kuhnauer had made a recommendation to the firm for me to get hired, so I had a chance to go over to Bogle and Gates and work. So I did get my experience in big law. So it was a long route to get there, but I still had my chance to get there.
Wow. There's another photo I want to pull up. This seems like it happened next. Tell us.
That's my wife, Leslie, and I, and that's our wedding day. And that wedding day was 42 years ago this past Wednesday. Leslie's been my rock, the love of my life. She's been the greatest mother, the greatest grandmother, the greatest friend, the greatest role model for me. And she's given so much to me. She's been with me every step of the way and been so supportive all of the way. And all I can ever say, Leslie, is you know how much I love you, and I tell you that every single day. Now, before we go any further, I don't want you to think Leslie was just watching Oprah at home. Leslie was a vice president of a Fortune 500 company in Seattle. Leslie retired as a Fortune 500 vice president and retired for a period of time when our grandchildren started to be born. And then Leslie decided, well, I'm going to go back and work again. Went to Sound Transit, and she became a director down there. And she made a huge impact on the labor community in Seattle. So Michael Parham, I talked to him last night, and he said, Jones, he said, you and Leslie have gone through life like it's an adventure. And that's exactly what it's been. And every single day we live our life like it is an adventure, and it has been, and I've enjoyed every step of the ride. So thank you, honey.
Wow. It's a power team.
Yep.
It's power. Moving forward in your professional career as an attorney, you eventually became, I pulled this from the wall in our office.
Okay.
You eventually became a federal prosecutor. Tell us what it was like working at the U.S. Attorney's Office here in Seattle.
I was at Bogle, and I had a client that was just wearing me out, and we hadn't had a vacation in 2 years, and we were in Hawaii. But before I left, I was representing a doctor, and I came to the U.S. Attorney's Office just to visit. So the doctor left, and I was walking around saying hi to people I hadn't seen for years, and Gene Anderson's the U.S. Attorney. And I go in his office, and we talk, and he said, Jones, why don't you come and do some real work for me? So I said, yeah, man, come on. And so I left, and when I finally get on vacation, this client was wearing me out. We didn't have technology. We had fax machines, and so, or mimeograph, maybe. I don't remember. And so I came back, and I told Leslie, she was drinking a pina colada. I said, I'm leaving Bogle. I'm going to go work at the U.S. Attorney's Office. She said, what? And so that was a change. I accepted the position, and I went to work at the U.S. Attorney's Office. And I have to tell you, of all the different jobs that I've had, Big Law, Port of Seattle, King County Prosecutor's Office, as a lawyer, that was the best job. The best job in terms of the opportunity and experiences it gave me to try cases, big cases, the independence that the office gave me. Which tried a lot of cases. I started off in major crimes. I went to fraud and tried some major cases, but the cases took a long time. And at the end of the day, the next trial might not be until the next year. So I wanted a little bit faster pace and asked if I could go in another unit. So they said, you can go in the drug unit because they're always trying cases. And so I did start trying drug cases. Then I worked up to what they call organized crime, drug enforcement, or OSADEF cases. And these were big cases. And a great time prosecuting these cases. And they were fun with the independence, with a tremendous amount of responsibility. And so when people talk about being, and I'm not trying to dog anybody, between litigators and trial lawyers, U.S. Attorney's Office taught you how to be a trial lawyer. And I also tell you that the Federal Defender's Office teaches you how to be a trial lawyer. People criticize these public agencies. These public agencies train super good quality lawyers, outstanding lawyers. And so I praise both those offices for the work that I see every single day.
And bringing it back full circle, Judge Jones, I'm an AUSA because of you. You inspired me and told me to apply, and I'm so glad that I listened to you, and I'm so thankful for Tessa Gorman, our U.S. Attorney, for hiring me.
Me too.
Continuing down your journey, Judge Jones, were there people like that for you that spoke life into you and encouraged you along your way?
Yes, I'd say from the time I was in law school, and you're saying, well, who was it? What was it? It was Lauren Miller Bar Association. Without question. They were there when we were in law school. The founders, Lem Howell, Judge Johnson, Don Haley. I could go on with the other names of the other founders. They were rock solid and helped us. Lem helped me with the bar exam. And Lem helped me get over that hurdle to be able to actually practice law. Gary Gayton, if it wasn't for Gary Gayton, also one of the founders, I would not probably be a federal judge. He hand-walked me through the entire process, and that process was over a year. Gary was an amazing lawyer, and he walked me through. And I have deep respect for all the work that he did. But I'd have to say my number one go-to people were my other parents, and that was Judge Charles Johnson and Lizelle Johnson.
I think we have a photo, too.
The special connection that we had between us was I was a defendant in front of Judge Johnson. Failure to stop at a stop sign, nothing more serious before there's any scandal going around. And then he married Leslie and I, performed the wedding ceremony. 25 years later, he performed our recommitment ceremony, and Judge Johnson swore me in as a King County Superior Court judge. Wow. Judge Johnson and Lizelle were there. Anytime I had an event, an occasion where I was either being recognized or something special was going on or swearing in, that couple was sitting there just like they were loving parents, and they were loving parents. And I talked to Lizelle on Mother's Day, and she apologized that she couldn't be here. And Lizelle's just such a beautiful, warm spirit, and it was a combined effort of both of them that helped me get through so many different opportunities in life. And Judge Johnson was never too busy. Sound like Kenny Lattimore, huh? But they were never too busy not to take my call and spend the quality time with me. And so I've always deeply appreciated him. And again, I emphasize, Lauren Miller Bar Association was for me every single time. Mm. Thank you, Lauren Miller.
Yes. I think we have a photo of you and Judge Johnson. Yes. Mm. We're going to move along to your path to the bench.
Okay.
I think we have a photo for that, too.
That was a swearing-in day.
Wow. What stood out to you about that day?
That was a day that was a culmination of all the times that people had told me no, and all the times that people said you can't, and all the times that people said you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you don't deserve to get this, or whatever people were saying. That was a day when I took my hand, I said, I can put all that in the closet someplace. I don't have to revisit that anymore, because I have finally got to a point of respect. Not that the other judges weren't respectful, but being a judge was such a special milestone for me in my career, in my life, so it meant a lot to me that day.
Wow. I think there's some more photos we can run through, too, of that day as well.
That's Leslie and I, as always, right there at my side. It's my family, my 8 brothers and sisters, and my mom. And I think that was probably the last time our family was alive and was able to take a collective picture like that. And I can tell you that room was floating. It was just a buzz with our family, and to be able to celebrate on a special occasion like that.
Being a King County Superior Court judge, what would you say was one of your most significant cases?
I'd say hands down, and everybody can probably ring the bell and say, Gary Ridgway. And do you applaud for Gary? When Gary had been investigated for 20 plus years in Seattle, he had murdered 48 women, horrible deaths, and they couldn't catch him. When they finally caught Gary, there was just a buzz around the county courthouse. And so my bailiff then, Juanita Clemente, who's here, she's been with me for 25 years, by the way. Juanita's convinced that she has a life appointment, and she lets me know that. But in any event, it was just running around the courthouse. Who was going to get this case? Whose lap was going to fall in? Nobody knew. And so Juanita came and said, wouldn't it be great if we got that case? I said, Juanita, you don't know what comes along with a case like that. And so March 25th, 2002, Dick Eady, who was the presiding judge, asked if he could come up and see me. And my heart took a leap at that point because I knew what he was coming up for. And he walked in, he says, Richard, I know that you would like to become a federal judge at some point in time, and short of a presidential appointment in the next 2 to 3 years, I've decided that I want to have you take on the Gary Ridgway case. And he said, I want you to know that the entire world will be looking at King County and focusing upon the work that you do, and we know that you do well. He turned around and walked out the door. And so I walked in the door, and Leslie looked at my face, and she said, you got the Ridgway case, didn't you? I started getting sympathy cards. People were feeling sorry for me. And I think Lem counted it up, and he said it was like 60-something motions were filed in the 18 months I had the case. We had no law clerks, had a full caseload, and it was just daunting. And you talk about taking an 18-month chunk out of your life, you have no idea the pressure of a case like that, particularly on the day of sentencing with everything else that we'd gone through, to try and dignify the women who had died, because the newspaper characterized them just as prostitutes, that Gary Ridgway went after them because they were just prostitutes. And I wasn't going to let these family members and these young women's lives go down like they were just prostitutes. And most of my remarks to Gary and to the community there was to dignify these women and to let Gary Ridgway, they had lives, they had parents, they had family, the people that deeply loved them and cared about them. And we even took a 48-second silence to memorialize the lives of each one of these women. And I could tell you that that morning, they shut the entire courthouse down. Cameras from around the planet were around the courthouse, and you talk about high-profile cases, it scare you to death when you look at the cameras. And I remember when they said it's time to go up, because I was on the 7th floor. We tried to get in the elevators. They were bunched up, couldn't get up. So I had 2 guards take me upstairs, and we go to the doors, and they open up the door, and there's guards as far down as I can see, and there's guards as far as up I can see. And as we take the first step, a guard salutes like this. So I turned around, thought somebody was coming behind me. But they were recognizing the responsibility that I had and the job that I had to do that day. And as I walked up the stairs to get to the 9th floor, there was continued salutes all the way up as I got upstairs. And that really let me know what the responsibilities were that day. So I assembled my staff before I walked in the courtroom, and I thanked everybody for all the hard work, and I apologized for what we had to go through the last 18 months, but we were going to get through the next hours or days until we got through with the sentencing, and we did. And Gary Ridgway got 48 life sentences. And I have to tell you, I still get letters from people. I had a letter from one of the victims whose remains were just found, and she said she always thought that her daughter was still alive. Always thought her daughter was still alive. And then the newspaper put something in the paper to say who victim or Bones X number was associated with. And she said, that was the first time I found out that my daughter was dead. And so the note that I sent her, I told her that her daughter was a real person, that she lived, that she had an existence, and she should be proud of the fact that you were a good mother to her and that your daughter loved you deeply. And it was unfortunate in terms of what happened, and said some other things to her. And this was just in the last few weeks. So that case, in terms of a significant case, when law clerks apply and say, I'd love to have an opportunity to work on a case like Gary, and I said, not me. So if that's what you're applying for, put this in a round file.
I think we got a photo of you presiding over that case as well. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Judge Jones, did you know as a Superior Court judge that you wanted to go to the federal bench?
I'd clerked for 2 years in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and so I knew what the quality of lawyering was like from both the defense side and from the U.S. Attorney side in terms of what the quality was like. And I wanted to go back and re-experience that as a judge. Now, that was a long-term goal, but I wanted to put it out there to let people know that was my dream, that was my goal, that's what my game plan was down the road.
Yeah, okay. I think we have another photo about that, too. And you got there.
Yeah.
What was that process like?
For King County Superior Court, it was...
for the federal bench.
For the federal bench. Yep. Federal bench, somebody once described, and I have to agree, and I think the other federal judges here, it was like a live autopsy where you're watching. And because you put your soul and you put your energy into applying for this position, and you lose total control. People you don't know, that you've never seen, can criticize and condemn who you are as an individual. People will say negative things that don't know you and try and torpedo your opportunity. And so I said that's what I wanted to do and applied.
Okay. We're going to roll some photos quickly because I'm seeing Andra looking at us at the time. Okay. Tell us what's going on here.
That's Richard scared at the confirmation hearing.
This one here.
Patty Murray, she came and she told me when I first interviewed with her, she said, if you get through the burning forest, she said, I will be there to carry you across. And she showed up at the confirmation hearing and spoke on my behalf, and I've got her words in my office that I hang.
This photo was taken after the hearing was over.
That was, all the wind went out, and then I was just exhausted. You don't know what the pressure is like to go in that room and not know one person can vote or few people can vote and try and turn thumbs down. You don't get a second bite at the apple. That's it.
But you got through.
I got through.
You got through.
And I was happy.
Yes. There's another photo. There's so much joy in everyone's eyes in this photo. Who's that person in the middle in blue?
That's Thurgood Marshall's wife, Sissy Marshall. When I was president of the Lauren Miller Bar Association, we brought her out here, and we became friends after that. And she wanted to celebrate my confirmation, and so she hosted a special dinner at the Georgetown Club. And there's a lot of black people that wanted to come to my confirmation hearing that wouldn't go and refused to go because they thought if, like Elaine Jones had the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, if she showed up, some of these senators would look and say, oh, he must be too liberal, I'm going to vote against him. Can you imagine that? Black folks couldn't go to support you because people thought that just because somebody black showed up for you, that might mean that you'd be too liberal to be appointed to the position. But we were trying to guard around the opportunity because you only get one shot.
Wow. Back to what you said about family and paving your own way. Did you find any importance from family members like your brother? I think we got a photo of him.
Yeah, Quincy's always been, just as all my other brothers and sisters have been significant in my life and made a huge difference in my life. He happened to be music, but everybody else had special talents, and everybody else came out of 410, looked out that same window the same as I do. My sister's here tonight, and I'm not going to say how old she is, but she's outstanding and beautiful. So thank you, Teresa. But my brother was always an inspiration and pushed about excellence and not having anyone tell you what you can't do and prevent you from doing what things that you believe that you have the opportunity to do. So he's always been a strong role model for me.
And what has it been like being a federal judge?
It's nice. And I love being a federal judge. We work hard. Despite what people say about, you guys just sit up there and just kick back and talk trash. No, we work hard, and we have a lot of case responsibility, enormous case responsibility, and we do our best to try and get through it, try and get to the motions and try the cases the way they're supposed to be handled, with integrity, with democracy in mind, and recognizing that no one is above the law.
That's right. Are you intentional about the people you hire and put in your chambers?
I am. My law clerks, me and my law clerks here. If my law clerks will stand up, if some of you are here, just stand up.
And we got a photo, too.
We have a rainbow of, there's just some of the law. We have a rainbow of folks who work here. And you'll see this one image that, well, there was a picture, and it was a picture of Ashley McDowell, Brian Leoping, and myself, and Juanita. It's the first time that there's an all-black chamber of any district court in the history of the state of Washington since 1905. I double-checked to make sure that that didn't run afoul of Judge Tanner, Judge Burgess, and Monica Benton, who clerked for him, said, nope, that's accurate.
Wow.
And it was a proud, now, this wasn't about, well, you're just picking them because they're black. No, they were picked because they're brilliant, they're smart, they're super smart, just as all the law clerks that have ever worked for me are brilliant and superstars. So thank you.
Wow. Back to that photo with you and Obama, real quick. That was before he was president.
Yes. No politics, no conflict.
What inspiration did you draw from meeting him, someone else that's committed to public service?
Michael Parham called me up and he said, Richard, Obama's going to be in town and his book's out. He said, if you have a chance to come down here, be here at 11:30. So I flew down, Les and I got down there, and Obama didn't come in like he was some stiff Ivy League Harvard graduate that couldn't connect. This was a brother that walked in the door. And within moments, we were talking trash and laughing and having a great time. Michael came up and said, how long have you guys known each other? And he was such an inspiration in terms of the charisma that he had, his brilliance, and his ability just to communicate and connect with people. That's how he runs his life, and that's how he ran his presidency.
We're going to wrap it up with some of the photos that are things that bring you joy. Let's go through those. That's a big fish.
That's right. Fishing, gardening, family's always number one. I'm a local town boy in terms of sports figures in Seattle. I've never worn anybody else's gear, period. I just wear straight up Seattle gear. That's how I spend my time.
Kraken.
Kraken, CEO's here tonight from the One Roof Foundation.
Seattle University.
Seattle U,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah. And there's one more we're going to go to. All right. Judge Jones, as you know, this dinner raises money for our Black graduates and also graduates that support the Black community. Do you have any final words of wisdoms to depart on them as they are on their way to enter into our profession?
I'd say two things. One, my dad taught us since we were kids, once the task is once begun, be the labor great or small, give the job your very best or none at all. In other words, don't half step, give it everything that you have. And the other thing that I would tell you, I keep on my desk right above my computer, and I start my day with reading this mantra, and it reads, what would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? Think about that. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? And that's how I live my life. I pursue it with the plan in mind that I'm not going to fail. I'm not going to make a mistake. Court of Appeals might think I did, but comes out of my office is error-free.
Judge Jones, you're a legend, and your legacy is going to live on through the support you have given to so many, through the excellence you've put into our profession, and through the love that you poured into our community. And your life is a true testament to how adversity does not dictate one's life, but instead can be used as a catalyst for great achievements, bravery, and courage. We love you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Great
Thank you,
job.
Judge Jones. Thank you.
Thank you, girl. Thank you.